Good evening. My name is Robin Yates. I'm part of the Arts and Craftsmen Guild on the Roycroft campus, and we are really happy to introduce Cliff Borchert. He'll be doing a presentation about the history of photoware, and he's a nature photographer and more. So we're very pleased to have him with us tonight. Cliff.
Thank you. As she said, I'm Cliff Borchert. Thank you very much for this opportunity to speak to you today. Special thanks to Robin for arranging all of this. And I'm grateful that we're in person for the first time since how many months? It's been a lousy year and a half, I'll tell you. I'll be talking today about digital imaging software in the shadow of a pandemic, its challenges and opportunities. In preparation for today, I reviewed some of your other Zoom meetings that you have up online, and I made a note to rewatch the Tim Fuss thing about photographing your art, because I have a whole house full of art and I want to get it captured some way, because I'm trying to make sure that the bigger pieces and the good pieces go to family members, because I'm getting too old to do all this stuff. And I noticed in watching the first part of his presentation, he was taking pictures of jewelry, and my wife always liked jewelry, so I'm going to take a lot of pictures of her jewelry as well. All right, my picture is up there. Can you see it? Okay. That was done in some AI software that I've been playing with for the last few months. But my history goes way back. I've been seriously involved in making images since my college days in I forget what year it was. But my inspiration goes even back further than that. Believe it or not, when I was 10 years old, I went to Charles Birchfield's house over there in West Seneca. And I got to talk to him for an extended period of time. My class, the 5th grade class at Gardenville Elementary, which is no longer there, they tore it down. But they wanted to do a presentation on a local person, and they picked Charles Birchfield. And a lady that's been involved with the Birchfield Penny for years and the Birchfield Nature and Art Center in Gardenville actually looked up his journal. And it was written in the journal that presentation at the school made a huge impression on him. So it might have been me. I went to his house. I didn't stutter, It was amazing. I don't even remember knowing anything about art, painting, or anything before I went there. But he made such an impression on me. It's stuck with me my whole life. This is a picture I took a number of years ago. And I remember a painting that just came up and hit me in the forehead at Charles Birchfield's studio. It was a picture of a single leaf that had fallen off the tree and stuck in the snow, but was upright. And it was just a tiny little, probably, an afterthought on his part to capture something he saw out his window. But that picture always reminds me of that painting that I saw those many, many years ago. Earlier, before everybody got here, I was talking to the folks about another one of my activities, which is I'm on the board of directors of Earth Spirit Educational Services. We are a group of people, mostly naturalists and one photographer, that go into schools and teach kids about nature, ecology, history, Native Americans, all sorts of things. And for years, we went into the schools. Of course, with COVID, we basically were out of business because the schools were all closed. But we're getting back up to speed, and I think we're going to come back strong. They also do a thing called Earth Spirit Excursions, where you sign up, pay a little money, and you go on excursions with naturalists rather than a tour guide. And I went on one a couple of years ago, BC, I call it, before COVID. I went with them to Yellowstone National Park. It was a trip of a lifetime. They are involved in the Wolf Project at Yellowstone. When they're there, they're communicating on a daily basis with people who are running that project. And if you don't know what the Wolf Project is, they reintroduced over the last 20 years small numbers of wolves from Canada into Yellowstone because the elk population was so high, they were eating everything in sight. There were plants that had not been seen in the park for decades because the elk would come along, little trees. You know, the elk are hungry all the time. They come along and eat all the little trees. And then those trees wouldn't grow up and have more trees. So now that they've leveled off the population of the elk, the trees are back. The vegetation is back. Animals that they hadn't seen for 20 years, beaver and stuff like that, they came back to the park. And it's amazing. And I encourage anyone to look up Earth Spirit Excursions and take a trip. This is one of the pictures I took while I was at Yellowstone. It was what I call my iconic Yellowstone picture. I also got inspired again, not by Charles Birchfield, but by Dan Hartman, who is a very famous nature photographer, lives right next to the park, and he's there constantly making photographs of the animals in the area. And his studio was amazing. We sat and drank and ate cheese and crackers and talked to him for hours about his work and how he does his videos now. He's basically a still photographer, but he's starting to do a lot of videos as well. This is a picture of Dan with us at the top of Beartooth Highway, which is actually outside of Yellowstone in Montana. And it's at 10,500 feet. I could hardly breathe. But it was wonderful. It was great. My passion is obviously for nature and wildlife photography, especially birds of prey, my favorite hawk picture. And we've raised horses for many, many years. I've raised, trained, showed horses all over the place in this area. I used to be the president of the East Aurora Driving Society right over here at the Knox. And we used to do carriage drive. That is the most fun thing in the world. Remember years ago when they did the marathon right through East Aurora down Girard, I think? They used to actually drive the horses down the streets. That was back 20 years ago, right? That was very, very encouraging to see a community like East Aurora taking an interest in their history. I mean, all you have to do is look at that polo horse stables at the Knox farm. It's huge. It's a wonderful place. I also worked for Eastman Kodak for 27 years in the engineering and research departments. And if you worked at Kodak in those days, you were immediately a member of the Kodak Camera Club. So it was wonderful. I could rent for almost nothing. The fanciest Canon DSLR, well, they weren't DSLRs at the time. They were SLRs, and they were all the lenses you could eat. It was wonderful. And they had all the equipment to process all that film and have fun. So anyway, software. Software is a fact of life if you're in the photography business nowadays, because 99% of the people always take digital pictures. And back in 1987, a little company called Adobe created a little piece of software called Photoshop. And it let digital images be adjusted, their darkness, the lightness, the zoom, correct different things in the picture back there in 1987. That was only a few years after Kodak invented digital photography. And the interface was difficult to use in the first versions of Photoshop. They didn't know how to do things right on the screen. You know, it was all with buttons and all sorts of crap. But anyway, it was a start. And they used their users to suggest what they needed to do next. And their users were mostly photographers in those days. And so they drove all sorts of development within Photoshop. It also sprang up a cottage industry in the business of other people who built software for modifying and processing images. Some of those are still around today. You ever hear of a company called Corel? Corel had a wonderful little paint type application. It wasn't really photography at first. It was, you could draw on the screen and make little pictures. And then they merged it with photo processing. So now you could add a picture to your drawing. And then the big boys got involved, Microsoft, Apple. When they came up with the graphical user interface, like the original Macintosh, where you could actually move something around the screen by pointing at it, moving it. Once they had that basis, then a lot of companies got on board with graphical user interface Photoshop type software. Meanwhile, there were a whole bunch of players at that time. I used to call them Photoshop and the Seven Dwarfs because nobody got anywhere near Photoshop. Sure, yes. Oh, I'm sorry. If you feel free to ask questions. I'm easily distracted, but I usually get back onto what I'm talking about. So anyway, they all got invested in images almost from day one. You had some rudimentary capabilities in every GUI operating system to play with images. The other, another source for editing software were the camera manufacturers. They needed to have software with their camera when they sold it to you. They sent you a disc with the camera and you put it in and you could load their software for manipulating their images. So if you bought a Canon camera, you got a Canon application called Canon Digital Photography or something. I forget what it was called. But anyway, you can still get that software if you buy a camera. So Nikon, Canon, Olympus, a whole bunch, Sony, everybody had an imaging processing piece of software that worked with only their cameras. So if you wanted to have more than one camera, you had to buy the same brand name. So anyway, Canon also needed to supply software that understood their image formats, because at that time they were getting into what they call raw images. When you take pictures with your iPhone or whatever, they come in usually as JPEG files. And when you send them to somebody, the person gets an email and it's got a JPEG file. That's sort of the industry standard for sharing images. But there's a much more data intense version of that same picture somewhere in the camera, whether it's a phone or a Canon camera or Nikon. It's a raw image of that same picture. And it's got data in there you wouldn't even think about. You can change the color palette that picture was taken with. There's a default JPEG file there, and you can play with that and have a lot of fun. But if you really want to get into really detailed processing of your image, you want to get to the raw image processing. Originally, Canon had their version, Nikon had their version, everything. Then they decided to embed it. In case of a Macintosh, it's embedded in the operating system. In case of PC, I think you actually have to download the definition of the raw files for Photoshop. So, with knowing which camera you're using. And then came phones. And you know how big the sensor is in the phone behind this little lens? It's about the size of the tip of your finger. I don't know how they do it. They do it with a thing called computational photography, which is software that's very intensely math-based. That's why your phones, one of the reasons your phones cost so much, is they have a CPU in there so that you can get to the internet. And they got a GPU, a graphical processor unit in your camera to take all of this little tiny pictures and make them look good. They have algorithms that they can run against these very tiny little files, and you can create amazing things. They now have HDR, what is that? What did I call it? Excuse me. High dynamic range. Why can't I remember it? I know it as HDR, but
Once you know what it's for, you don't need to
yeah,
remember.
that's the last time you ever have to, you figure out what it is and then you say, oh, okay, it's HDR. Do you ever see these pictures of a cathedral and you can see every nook and cranny in the cathedral? That's what HDR can do for you. And they take the raw data that I was talking about, and they reprocess it 5, 10, 15 times. And they pull detail out of every dark space in that image. If you looked at the original picture, it would be the big bright spot by the window, and that's it. But HDR became a thing for a while on the internet. Everybody was playing with HDR. I don't know if it's good for what it does. There's also feedback into the cameras, the real, I'll call them real cameras, the Canon, Nikon, Sony cameras. And that is they're using this computational photography software to make a smaller camera. It's not going to ever be the size of your phone, but the size of what used to be a big DSLR with a long lens and weighed a ton. And I still have a few of those. But the newer ones are smaller. They don't have a mirror in them, so they're tighter and more compact. And computational photography is going to be added to those cameras. So look out, it's going to be amazing next few years. Let's see, hardware solutions. I was looking for my Lytro, but a bunch of companies have added specialty hardware and software in a box and sold it to you as a camera. There was a fledgling company called Lytro that created what they call a light field camera. When you take a picture, right? In old-fashioned cameras, there was a piece of film, and the film was in a plane. It was thin, very thin. So only the light that hit the film right, and it was in focus, got really detected by the film. And they started digital cameras that way. There was a sensor that was flat. Now with a light field camera, they take all of the data for every possible part of the film, like many, 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 many pieces of film in one camera. So you can actually create data. This camera was very interesting. It looked like a scientific instrument, doesn't look like a camera. But it actually, you could put the Lytro picture up on a website and change what was in focus in the picture by just clicking on it, which is really cool. Photographers hated it. They said, that's why I get paid, is I know where to focus the camera. I don't want to have somebody just go in later and figure out where they want to focus. I want to tell a story by focusing on that person's eye or that person's face or that animal's nose. I don't want somebody later coming in and saying, oh, that tree behind them, it looks cool. Let's put that in focus. So anyway, Lytro didn't make it. They even tried getting into the movie business, but that was a complete disaster. And there was a company called DxO, they're still around. They made a little tiny box that was about a cube like that big, 1.5 inches big, and you plugged it into your charging port on your camera or on your phone, and you could actually take pictures in that little box. It had a bigger sensor than that tiny little thing the size of the end of your finger, and it would put the picture into the camera's memory. And it was a great idea, but you would have to build one for every camera that came out. And you know how often a new camera comes out. They couldn't stay in business. But they did get very good at software, and they're still around. They have all sorts of good image processing software, as good as Photoshop in some ways. And they have now fallen toward the new hot thing, which is artificial intelligence. And artificial intelligence in software started with, I can figure out how to make a button, and I want to improve that whole image. You say, okay, I want to push the button, and everything in the picture gets better. And you can only do that to a certain amount. But AI also was doing things in the other part of the world. They were doing face recognition, you know? And that's now in the camera. My latest camera, you can put it in eye mode, and it'll actually focus on the eye of the person, which is where you're supposed to focus a camera. If you're taking a portrait of a person, you always focus on their eye, because that's what people look at. And it recognizes their face and it recognizes their eye and adjusts the camera to optimize the picture for that face. And it's partly due to the fact that the government and other places are interested in recognizing faces. There's some good news on that. You know, it's not all bad.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So what you talked about already, is it related to like things we see like a Shrek movie where there's actual actors and there's somehow the film kind of recreates them in more of an animated way? It's
all connected through software. There's bits and pieces of Photoshop type software in the software that they use to develop movies. Kodak, of course, was in the entertainment imaging business, that's what we call the movies. We had to have a big name for it. But Kodak is still in that business because the movie companies want to use film to film movies still. And they want Kodak, a certain Kodak movie film. And they pay, last time I checked, over $2 a foot. And they use tens of thousands of feet of film to make one movie. That's why a movie is $10 million to make.
Why specifically that kind of film?
It's that they like it. They like the results they get. They then suck all that film through a machine and digitize it, because your movie houses nowadays don't have film. They don't have a projector like in the old days. They have a box that the entire movie gets sucked into that box overnight, and that's the new movie they show the next day, and it's all digital. It's amazing technology. And then I'll say, let's jump to the pandemic. We all put our masks on. We all were staying home day after day, staring at the kids, staring at people in your house. And I was all alone, so I was staring at tens of thousands of images I've taken them since I was in college. some on prints, but mostly on digital images, because a digital camera is unlike a film camera, because in a film camera you had 36 pictures you could take. and then you had to put in a roll of film. Digital camera, I've got like 128 gigabytes of memory in my camera. And it's on a little chip the size of a postage stamp. And I take a lot of pictures when I'm out in the boonies looking at animals. And I come home and I suck them all into a computer. And now I've got all these mostly okay pictures, some really bad pictures, and some nice ones. You know, I get some keepers once in a while. The keepers are easy to process because you don't have to change them much. It's those ones that are okay, that are a pain in the butt. And you can do it in Photoshop. You can do it in all these other image processing software packages. But it takes time. I mean, I used to try to learn all the photography stuff in Photoshop. It's impossible. Only 20% of the stuff in Photoshop is really good for photography, still photography. Everything else is for graphics arts and the movie business and the video business and you name it. They have a little bit of something in Photoshop for every customer that could ever buy a license. So anyway, I was stuck indoors and all I was reading about, I'm on the computer, you know, you get your email, got nothing else to do, you have breakfast, drink a cup of coffee, you read your email. I get inundated with artificial intelligence software. Buy mine, buy mine, buy mine. There must be 20 different software packages that talk about artificial intelligence. So I said, I got all these old bad pictures or medium pictures. Maybe I can make something out of it. I got to do something for the next year. So I started looking at all the different packages and I tried the trial version of this and the trial version of that. And I actually came up with a couple of decent ones, and there's probably some that aren't even invented yet. And now that people are buying, like the package I'm using most is Luminar AI, Photoshop is trying to steal back that business. They've added sky replacement, which I'll talk to you in a little while, reflections, and face enhancement. I call it plastic surgery in a box. They also have amazing one-button kinds of things, you know. You can make a bride have the absolute perfect complexion. They look like Barbie dolls. You might have seen them on the society pages. They want to look perfect. So they go to the hairdresser and the makeup artist, and they have the makeup girl and the hairstylist right in the back room during the wedding, make sure they look absolutely perfect. And then they get pictures taken out and they want them to be even more perfect. So you use a package like Luminar AI, you can get rid of any blemish on any face you can imagine. And I think they look like Barbie dolls, but that's what they want. You can also do a little plastic surgery south of the face. You can make them skinnier. You can make them taller a little bit. You can make them perfect. And that's what they want to look at. It's their day, you know, let them look good. And as time goes on, I'm sure they'll be able to perfect anything about the human body. That's why I call it plastic surgery in a box. But there's other reasons you want to use artificial intelligence, because it's faster to use it than to go into Photoshop in the old version of Photoshop. You can do it, but you got to spend a lot of time. I used to spend hours sometimes in Photoshop just getting rid of something that I accidentally got in a picture. You can now, I've played with some software from a company called Topaz, and they have different packages for whatever you want to fix. They have a package to sharpen images. It's incredible. You take a fuzzy picture that the fuzziness was because it wasn't focused right. You can make the focus better. I don't know how they do it. It's artificial intelligence. You can, it might be fuzzy because something was moving. Either the camera was moving or the object was moving. So you get a streak. It can, by magic, make that streak a lot less. You can increase the resolution of an image. Did you ever get a picture from somebody from a really old cell phone and the picture is like this big even on your little screen on your phone? That's because the original cell phones and the flip phones and all that stuff that originally had cameras in had the sensor was still the tip of your finger, but it was a very poor quality sensor. So you couldn't get the high resolution pictures you expect out of a modern. My phone is 2 years old. It's out of date. I have to get a new one. So anyway, that's another thing. Photoshop's adding super resolution to their next version of everything to try to get everybody back into the fold. I pay Photoshop over $10 a month to rent. I don't even own it. I have a subscription to their software. Good news is they update it regularly. They used to update it only once every 18 months. It was a pain, but you're paying over $10 a month every month. And there's a whole bunch of stuff that artificial intelligence can give you that's amazing. Like I said, living in Western New York, have you ever taken a picture and you look up in this, you take a picture of the sky as part of the picture and it's dark or it's cloudy. It's been cloudy a few days in Western New York. I've noticed that. You don't need to worry about that. You can be in sunny California, you can be in Colorado with that bright blue sky, you can be anywhere you want with the software because it changes the sky. You have clouds that you might want to add to your picture. You can add dark clouds, dark sunsets, dark, dramatic things. You can add beautiful sunsets, You can add all this stuff to an existing picture. You can detect and fix all sorts of things about the face, like blemishes. You can detect all sorts of stuff. You can also, now I'm going to try something. I wasn't able to test this out before today, but why not? We're here. I'm going to fire up Luminaire AI and I'll show you what you can do with a picture. My old laptop is a little slow. That's why I didn't want to have too much demonstration because you twiddle your thumbs waiting for the thing to process.
It's like in San Francisco.
Topaz Labs, I don't even own a computer big enough to run this stuff on. It's video enhancement. It not only does what I just talked about on still images, you can suck an entire video into it and it'll enhance the whole thing. All right, let's see, I gotta share screen again. Okay, this is a picture that I took of Dan Hartman. In this tool has all the things you might want to do naturally, except for what you have to go into Photoshop for. Right on the which way is this? Right, the right side. I don't know my left and my right, so I have to ask. There's a thing called erase, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But say you want to erase something, so we want to erase that camera. So it's distracting to me. Like I said, my computer's a little slow. Where'd the camera go? You can make anything that is in the picture, most things. Doesn't work every time, but you can take, do you ever have a person with a stick that's like right here in the picture. Or the tree growing out of their head. Did you ever get that one? Where you take a picture of somebody and you forget to watch the background and all of a sudden there's a tree sticking out of their head. You can erase it. You can enhance colors any which way. The one I like because I take a lot of nature is called landscape. And there's haze in the sky there. It was a wonderful trip to Yellowstone. I wouldn't have missed it for the world. But while I was there were forest fires outside of the park. And the whole sky was filled with haze quite often. So this dehaze button has saved a lot of my pictures because I can just say, oh, okay, you don't like that smoke? Just take it away. And then you can see the mountains that are behind them. You can make it seem like it's the golden hour. That's just before sunset. Or you can, and there's not much foliage in there, but you can make the foliage stand out pretty easily. Notice the green of their caps also stood out. You can take this picture I took of somebody winning the race at Finger Lakes. I like the way the silks look on jockeys. Hey, I hit the trifecta. Guess how much I won? $42. Three of the winning, actually the winning 4 horses were all the favorites in the race for the Belmont. I hit the trifecta and I win $42. Come on, you don't want to hit thousands or something, come on. But it was fun. Okay, let's try a face. Here's my face. There's a whole bunch of things you can do with faces. Okay, there we go. Oh, it took a long time to get the face up. I don't know what's going on here. You can make a face darker. You can make a face lighter. You can make a face slimmer. Oops. Got a hold of something over here. There we go. This is how fat I really was that day. And say I don't want to be that fat today. Oh, it's a little bit of a delay. That's how I was. Now, if we wait a few seconds, I'll get skinnier again. And you can, especially with portraits of women, they like their lips to be reddish, You can just add some redness to the lips, It knows what a lips are. It recognizes face a lot more about a face than just 2 eyes and a mouth, It recognizes a ton of stuff. It's very scary. It's very scary. Now, if you've got hundreds of photography objects to manipulate, AI is great because you're going to do groups of things at a time. You can take 4 pictures and make all the faces slimmer.
The image I knows from the two down.
Yeah. Right.
What does the camera do? Does it stretch out the background pictures that fill in?
It does what Photoshop calls content-aware manipulation. It knows what's around the camera, so it just duplicates what was around the camera and fills in over the camera with those things. This is a cute little bugger. This is a pika. He lives on that Beartooth Highway at 10,000 feet. He's very unique. He's a rodent. He looks a little bit like a weird bunny, but he can only live at 10,000 feet. He's been totally adapted by nature to be, his system can process that small amount of oxygen that's up there. He can cope with the vegetation that's there. And if you bring him down to ground level, he'll die. But they're happy. They got their little rocks that they play on, and they carry it. I tried to get a picture of them, but they carry around all these little pieces of food in their mouth. It's a pika. This is a picture of, this is in memoriam. This guy here is Ken Morgan. He's been around Buffalo forever. He's been called the, do I have that picture? He's been called the ambassador of Buffalo for photography. He has taught more people how to take pictures than anybody I know. He passed away about a year ago. He and I used to work on judging the Birchville Nature and Art Center photography show every year for many, many years. I miss him.
He was at all your art openings.
He was at every art gallery opening ever. I don't know how he did it. Every time we would go to an art gallery, there he was. And he knew everything about photography. He was genius. This is a shot. There's another whole dimension to photography nowadays, and it's called apps. How many apps do you have on your phone? 10, 20, 40, 100? I downloaded every photography app that was free, just to try it out. And this one I found not too long ago. It's artificial intelligence, sort of. You take the picture, it wipes out the whole background. It does a mask of just the subject of the photograph. And then you can add whatever you want back in. You can make that person be against the background of, let's see. It's absolutely amazing. There's a real problem in a lot of the software where you say, I want to take this subject and cut them out of the picture. And the software will keep a little bit of the background or near their ear, between their neck and their shoulder. And then it's a lot of work to get rid of that later. Oops. Hang on a second.
But you know what's different about the way this makes selection versus, you know, like.
They're very close-mouthed about it because it is, in fact, their intellectual property. The algorithms are extremely complex, very costly to program. So every company has their own recipe. You can't see mine. You like my veal parmesan? I ain't gonna give you the recipe.
I'm just curious if there's any information about that, because in the old ones kind of just pick similar colors.
Yep.
And sort of draw a background and similar and then try it out. And then you have to. Great question.
Yep. Here's another artist that I know. This is Delbo. That's his first name. Tom. He's a wonderful educator as well as a very good artist. He comes into the schools and he'll paint a picture while he's lecturing to the children. It's amazing. It's been around West Seneca for about 1 million years. This is a picture that I took near Batavia, I think. And let's see what we can do with that in Luminar AI. Where'd it go? Lost it. Oh, there it is. This was a nice picture. I like the blue. I found the sky to be sort of boring. So I went and I said, okay, let's replace the sky right? And there's like dozens of skies. And you can add as much sky as you want. You want it to be dramatic. You can go in here and say, I want dramatic sunsets. And you can pick one. And it's amazing. It happens almost instantaneously. I don't know how they do it, but it's cool. I mean, this package was not that much money. It was expensive, but it wasn't like I paid $300 or $400 for a package that doesn't do half what this does. Yeah. Then you can add what they call sky adjustments and augmented sky. What do you want to change on this picture? You want to put some birds? Oops. This thing keeps getting in my way. How do I get rid of this? Let's see if I do that. Okay. Let's pick this one and we'll say place the object. How many birds you want? We can change the amount of birds. I have half that number of birds. You want the birds to be flying over here. You can rotate. You can do whatever you want. You don't ever have to go out of the house. You can just make up pictures as well. It was sort of a dry summer that year, so I went in with landscape, and I said, okay, I want to make the foliage different. That's not what I want, so let's change it to green. It's going to take a little while for some reason. You probably could with a little work. There are ways of adding your own objects into here, like clouds. You take your big portfolio of cloud pictures that you've taken over the years and you import them into here. And now you can have your clouds in your sky wherever you want. Yeah, it's not really cheating. It's more like there's a guy who's big into this. He calls it composting. I know it's not really composting. It's compositing. And these guys will take Photoshop layers, put 100 different layers together and have one object, one photograph in one part of the screen in each of those 100 layers. And when it comes out, it looks like, you know, Picasso was having a fun day. You know, you can put anything into this photographs.
It's kind of AI collage.
Yeah, you can do whatever you want. This is another photo room. It's an app that you can get for your phone. And this is another picture of Ken Morgan. He was actually at one of the art shows in the park. My wife took a picture of the City of Buffalo photography ambassador. He was fantastic. So, anybody got any questions online or in the room?
I just, maybe more of a comment, but I'd like to know what you think about this, and the way humankind is progressing.
Mhm.
You know, whatever, tens of thousands of years into the future, and imagine this going more three-dimensional, somehow changing the human body to a different form. And it seems like that would be possible someday, maybe as quickly as this kind of thing is developing.
Yeah, I've got a whole nother presentation I could do on printing photographs. Nowadays, you can print them on canvas. You can print them on glass, steel. You can print them on metal paper. It's metallic It's instead of just being a flat piece of white paper, it's got a metallic sheen to it. So when you put a picture of a waterfall on it, it's just gorgeous, you know? They now have three-dimensional printers. You can design something on a computer in 3 dimensions and it prints it out and it's a solid object. It's not just a piece of paper. And believe it or not, somebody is working on living tissue kinds of things that you could print in 3D. So maybe they'll print you a new ear if you're Van Gogh and you cut off your ear. They could print an ear that looks like your ear because if all they had to do is have a photograph of your ear.
They're printing prosthetics.
Printing prosthetics, printing anything.
I know a jeweler who's doing digital work on a computer, designing these, design like this, and then printing in 3D.
Yeah.
And printing it in resin. In 3D.
I inherited my mother's bad eyes and my father's bad teeth. So I went to the dentist. They had this little thing and they went into the mouth. They didn't have film, they just had a little tiny scanner and they scanned my teeth and they said, oh, that one's got to be replaced. They popped that one out, made an exact duplicate of my tooth and did an implant. Can't tell the difference. It's actually whiter than my other teeth. So they can do a lot with 3D stuff. Where this is going, I don't know. I'm a crazy person, so I think of things. I don't know why. I was thinking Kodak was working on this thing called film in, digital out. It was a machine that would suck in film and generate digital stuff. And they could modify it while it went through, you know, so if you took a picture of a guy standing there with a green screen, you could actually add the background in digital as it was coming out the other side. So he could be standing on the deck of a ship when the digital version comes out and he's really just standing against the blank wall when you took the picture. I was thinking, in the future, I should get this patent. Make up your own movie. You like certain actors, but you're not 100% sure you like the actors that were actually in the movie Casablanca, right? So you want W.C. Fields as Rick, you know? You want Judy Garland as, what was her name? Can't remember. But you could add your own movie. Yeah, well, it was the character that Lauren Bacall played. I'm trying to think of the character. But you could actually make a movie up with the same dialogue. You can now, this, I don't understand it. I don't even know if I believe it. They have a technology where you can sample a person's voice and then type in something you want that person to say, and it creates their voice saying those words. So you can't believe a darn thing you hear. If I can do it with fairly inexpensive software and add birds to a picture, I'm sure they can add whatever they want to any picture they want. Or they can make the picture up completely from scratch. You know?
So it all becomes fake news.
Well, I don't want to get into a political argument, but photo manipulation has been around as long as there have been pictures. People did it in drawings. They would fake something they saw and they would change it and generate a, you know, cubists didn't see a watch melting over the edge of a table. It didn't really happen, but they can paint it that way. So you can, back as long as, I think Japanese people were doing this in the 17th century. They were faking pictures, but you know, Most of what you see is legit, you know, because it's too much trouble to even get in there and do this sort of thing. Most people might put a filter, Instagram, you know what Instagram is? You might take a picture and put an Instagram filter on it rather than put it out there as is. You might take a picture and run it through Photo Room and add a Person of the Year title on your photograph over some fake magazine cover. You can do that, and most of it is easily detected as being funny. You know, somebody was playing around. Most photographs just come into the cameras and they go out on the internet. Where do 99.9% of all photographs on cell phones exist? On the phone or in Instagram, Facebook, you know, that's it. They don't ever get printed. I think I've printed out maybe half a dozen pictures that I took with a cell phone my whole life. 90% of all pictures exist only on the hard drive you stored them on, because they're not good enough. They're the one that the person didn't like, you know. I don't like my smile that way. I like my smile this way. There's a huge number of images taken every year that are just not used. I use some of them. I got a year and a half of fun out of playing with pictures. Some of these pictures I took 15 years ago, and they were boring. They didn't have any color in them. They didn't have the right focus. They didn't have the right background. They had a cloudy sky. I put a sunny sky on. Yes.
Where's digital display going right now? Purchasing photographs.
People still buy photographs, not as many as they used to. And the places that do photographs pretty inexpensively are getting pretty good, because the equipment they use is pretty smart. Kodak is still producing high-end printers for like magazines and stuff like that, and catalogs.
Digital display.
Yeah, things like Instagram have broadened the audience for photographs. I'm not sure they're all really good photographs to display, but that's up to the user. Oh, like a digital frame? Yeah. I don't know where that's going, because I have a little box. It's about the size of a hockey puck. And because I use all Apple stuff, it talks to my TV, and it can get any photograph I own and put it up on my TV. So I don't need a different device to display digital versions of my pictures. I just throw them up on my TV. And if that thing was working, we could put a whole disc full of photographs and display them on a screen. Artists are still selling. People still like things like art photography, you know. Yeah, they'll buy digital, but they won't spend a fortune unless it's extremely good. There has been this, you know what cryptocurrency is? I don't understand this at all. I think it's, what do they call it in the 90s? Irrational exuberance. People are just nuts over this stuff. But there are uses for that same technology in the photography business, because you can encrypt your photographs. And I heard, I don't know if I believe it, but I heard that somebody sold an encrypted photograph for hundreds of thousands of dollars. And it wasn't a print. It wasn't, you know, yeah, NFT. Yeah. Yeah, it's all in cryptocurrency. So but somebody spent a fortune on it. Of course, they may have made a fortune in cryptocurrency because they got in early and they had a machine running 24 hours a day. But photography changes every decade, and it's going to change next decade even more. This stuff will be old hat. Sure.
I would say for digital photographers, if you go to any art show, there's going to be a percentage of artists there that are digital photographers.
Well, I don't mean the process of the digital, I mean, there's a screen on your wall
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
someone's photography. Will change. 10.
Yeah. I've been thinking about doing that. I got this personal project, and I'm going to watch Mr. Fuss's video about taking pictures of your art, because I've got a lot of photographs at home. I've been scanning in the ones I don't have the digital files for because I lost them. There's a thing called Lightroom that Adobe makes. Lightroom is to Photoshop as a file drawer is to a picture on your desk. It keeps track of all your pictures, hundreds, maybe thousands, maybe tens of thousands of pictures can be managed by one instance of Lightroom if you have a big enough computer and hard drive. And it knows things like which camera took that picture, because embedded in every digital picture in the world is what camera took it, what was the f-stop, what was the shutter speed, all this stuff. Plus the time it was taken, the date it was taken. If it's got a GPS, it knows exactly where it was. And Lightroom can show you all of the pictures that you took on a particular day at a particular location. And it actually has a map. And you can point at the map and it'll show you the pictures that were taken at that point on the map. And it's not like Buffalo. It's like your backyard. You know, it's like really, really cool. There's a new thing, I'm playing with it, trial version, because I don't think it's ready for prime time. It's called Excire, E-X-C-I-R-E. Excuse me, my phone is insistent that I tell it something. Anyway, it keywords your photographs for you. It sucks in your photographs, and it can suck in a lot of photographs. I haven't tried that part yet, but it can be embedded in your Lightroom. So it could be talking about thousands of pictures. And it'll give you a bunch of keywords that it found objects in those pictures that it recognized. And things about it photographically. Is it colorful? Is it got bokeh in it, which is that little round circle you get when you have something out of focus in your picture? Does it have, is it high contrast, low contrast? All these things. And you can keyword it automatically. I mean, I used to spend hours going through and meticulously adding keywords. Oh, this is a cardinal. This is a red-tailed hawk. This is a male blue jay. This is a female blue. It takes hours to do that, but then you can find your picture. This thing does it for you. People, it knows if it's a young person, if it's a group of people, it can tell if it's older adults, it can tell if they're female, if they're male. I don't know how it does this, but if this becomes a real product, I don't know if it's ready, but that'll make these databases of images that people are saving very valuable.
What would you say is the best
A painting? That's why I'm going to watch that video. If you go online to the Arts and Craftsmen Guild, there's a guy, I think his name is Tim Fuss. He used to work at Kodak. I never met him when he was there, but of course there was 100,000 people working there when I was working there. But he worked at Kodak and done a lot of work to learn how to photograph artwork correctly. And you can watch the video. I'm gonna watch it tomorrow because I want to start taking pictures. I've been scanning all my prints in, that's easy, you know, it's a digital flat thing. But I've got artwork that's, you know, how paintings and stuff are three-dimensional. I got jewelry that's three-dimensional. I got things that are painted but are on wood, like a piece of wood, not on a flat piece of wood, but on a curved piece of wood. Native American scenes and stuff. I'd love to be able to get that into a digital file somehow and save it. Use Excur and figure out what it sees, you know.
Essentially, it's phone number.
Okay, very good. I know you came here. I don't know how long you usually run. I'm very long-winded. I can talk for hours about anything. Want to talk about horses? I got a horse you wouldn't believe. He's the nicest horse I ever owned. So, two things. Don't be afraid of software on your computer to do digital manipulation. It's getting easier and easier and easier to use.
I don't know if Photoshop's it.
Photoshop never gets really easy, but what I do, I used to try to learn everything, but I learned that there's like 7 ways to do anything that you want to do in Photoshop. So the thing you learned how to do might not be the best way to do it. So I just go to YouTube and say, how do you add a banner to a picture in Photoshop? And I watch the video, it shows me the currently best way to do it, and I do it that way, and it's quick. So anyway, he's got, I know, he's a good indicator of when I should shut up. So anyway, my name's Cliff Borchert. Robin knows my phone number. If you have any questions later, give me a call.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Okay, how do we shut this thing down?
Can you just give me this information
Sure.
right now?
Okay.
So, because I need it.
Okay. Address is physical, house.
Yes,
house address,
yes.
okay.
Are you still on 2 Rod Road?
3 Rad. Yeah.
3 Rod, okay. No, my kids went to Allendale and
Oh, cool.
I was her president of PTA.
PTA and she got along really well.